My name is Linda Cassidy. I'm 29, and for a long time, my family taught me the difference between being loved and being looked at. The lesson began the spring my older sister, Calla, was promoted. Big, glossy, congratulatory email blasted across her company. Champagne in the break room, the kind of corner office that photographs well during golden hour. My parents answered that email like a fire alarm for pride. They booked a 7-day Mediterranean cruise, first-class cabins, balcony breakfasts, a robe photo that would make their friends type heart emojis without thinking. And they took Calla and her boyfriend along. Every night, a new postcard captioned for the internet. So proud of our girl. A lineup of sunsets no one in our family had ever watched with me. I sent a congratulations message. I even called Calla before they sailed to say, "You earned it." And then I went back to my life, the one that doesn't collect applause. 3 months later, I got my own promotion. Not as loud as Calla's, but it mattered. I moved into a lead role in analytics, my first time managing people, my first mention in the internal newsletter where they use the formal middle initials that make you sound finished. I told my parents over dinner. Mom smiled politely. Dad said, "Well done," the way he does when you parallel park without tapping the curb. Mom asked if the new role required a different dress code, then drifted back to Calla, her boyfriend's boutique opening, the candle brand, the rescue dog with an Instagram page. I didn't expect a matching cruise. I expected a card, or a cake, or a toast that used my name. Instead, they left for the lake house that weekend. Just the two of them. No invite. No, "We're proud of you." Just a selfie from the dock captioned, "Finally, some quiet." I double-tapped it like a stranger. 2 weeks later, Aunt Jill told me, casual as a weather report, that my parents had offered to pay for Calla's wedding venue when the time comes. Calla wasn't engaged. There wasn't a date. There was just a certainty that if a dream needed funding, it would arrive at her doorstep with a bow. When I asked Mom about it, she waved the question away. "We just want to make sure she's set up." Set up, as if futures are furniture delivered to the child with the biggest windows. I let it go, or I told myself I did. You can fold resentment into a neat square and tuck it in the drawer under "Don't be petty," but it doesn't stop humming. My birthday landed on a Tuesday. I called to see if they were free. Dad said they were leaving town for a quick getaway. "Where?" I asked stupidly. He brightened. "Same cruise line we took with Calla. Return customer discount." I didn't say anything. He chuckled like it might land better if it sounded like a joke. "We'll take you next time." We both knew there isn't a next time for the child who doesn't make a scene. That night, I ate takeout alone, scrolling through their new cruise photos. Calla commented on one. "Looks familiar." Dozens of likes. No mention of me. No mention of Tuesday. Something shifted then. Not anger. Not yet. But a calibration. This wasn't about a trip. It was about roles. In our family, you could be the highlight or the lighting crew. I had always shown up with extension cords. 2 weeks after their second cruise, we had a Sunday barbecue. Routine. Calla and her boyfriend were there, so were two aunts, an uncle, a cousin on his second plate. I almost didn't go. But I wanted to test whether the selfie from my birthday came with a late apology, a sheepish toast, a crumb of acknowledgement. At the door, Dad gave me a nod. Mom offered a half hug that forgot how to close. No happy birthday, no "How's the new role?" The air tasted like lighter fluid and habit. The topic of the night was again Calla, a regional leadership summit invite, a keynote lineup, names everyone knows. People clapped. Her boyfriend said, "She was born for this," and I believed him because I had watched my parents build the stage. I poured drinks. I refilled a glass that never thanked me. I picked up a plate someone dropped. It made more noise than my promotion. At one point, Mom handed me her phone. "Can you take a photo of us?" They arranged themselves around Calla, arms cinched, the grill smoke turning cinematic behind them. I raised the phone, centered the faces, and there it was, a perfect picture missing the person taking it. No one said, "Get in here." No one shifted to make room. I snapped the shot and handed the phone back. Mom didn't even check if I was in it. Inside, I pretended to check a message and stood in the hallway listening. They were planning Christmas. Calla and her boyfriend wanted to travel abroad. "Our gift to them," Mom said. Dad offered to help with flights. The conversation moved like a river that had never run through me. That was when the decision solidified. I would not argue with the past. I would not inventory receipts at the table. I would simply stop auditioning for a role I never wanted. If my family didn't look in my direction, I would stop standing where it hurt to be unseen. When Christmas came, I sent nothing. No gifts, no explanations. Silence can be a weapon, but it can also be a boundary with a soft closing hinge. Mom called 3 days later. "We miss you." "I've been busy with work," I said. "You could have said something." "I thought about it," I answered. "But then I remembered you boarded a cruise on my birthday." She got quiet, then said, almost defensively, "It wasn't meant to hurt you. We didn't think you'd care that much." That sentence fit into me like a key in the wrong lock. Useless, but precise. They didn't think I'd care because I had trained them not to. Good daughters don't score keep. Good daughters refill glasses. Good daughters take the picture, not the seat. I hung up politely, not angry, just done. The next event I declined. The one after, I didn't answer. Invitations adapted to the silence the way people do when they learn which rooms echo. The family group chat kept moving. Kala's brunches, Kala's panel, Kala's rescue dog wearing a sweater in October. I muttered a reaction once, and even that felt like labor. Meanwhile, I stopped trying to haunt a house that couldn't see me. There's a specific relief in realizing you don't owe closeness to a table that only calls it family when you're useful. I aimed my attention elsewhere, not as a hiding place, but as an act of respect for the person I was when no one was watching. Work got sharp, not frantic. I pitched projects to people whose names used to make my throat dry. I said yes to risk and no to make work. My team doubled. My calendar filled with meetings that felt like doors opening instead of rooms I had to clean. I signed for a condo that wasn't huge but had light that behaves, the kind that walks across your floor at 4 p.m. and says you were right to wait this long. I threw a housewarming. Coworkers came. Neighbors brought plants. A friend from university arrived. With a tart she'd made herself. No parents, no sister. Not because I wanted to punish them, but because I could physically feel the old performance in my hands, and I was done holding anything that didn't hold me back. An old friend of my parents messaged on LinkedIn after. "Heard about your recent success. Congratulations. Your parents must be thrilled." I stared at the screen and felt something tighten. Not grief, exactly. More like the moment you notice you've been carrying a bag for blocks that isn't yours. They knew. Of course they knew. Family friends talk. Cousins text cousins. My balcony photo gathered polite hearts. Still, the people who taught me about love and looking had not looked my way. Then Kala's engagement detonated across social media. Flower field, drone video, branded hashtag. The first comment belonged to my mother. "We're so proud of you, sweetheart. You've built something beautiful." I closed the app, not because I was angry, but because I finally understood the shape of the room I'd been standing in. There was always going to be a center, and it was not where I had been told to wait. I didn't send a gift. I didn't attend the engagement party. When my father texted to say they assumed I'd be there, I replied, "I won't be attending." No apology, no reason, no follow-up. I went for a walk at dusk, the hour where windows glow and you can't help but see how other people live. A couple on a fire escape clinked glasses. Someone across the street shouted at a game. A dog barked at nothing and believed it was something. I breathed. In the glass of a dark shop window, I saw my reflection holding no tray, wearing no name tag, waiting for no camera. I was only myself, which, it turned out, was more than enough to start over. When you stop calling, people notice. Just not for the reasons you hope. They don't wonder what broke you. They wonder what's wrong with you. It had been 4 months since I last heard my mother's voice. The silence had become a language of its own. At first, it felt like exile. Then it started to feel like oxygen. I poured all that quiet into work. My office became my sanctuary. Glass walls, muted colors, the hum of focus. I stayed late because I wanted to, not because I had to. My name started to appear on project decks, in meeting recaps, even in those company-wide recognition of excellence emails that people usually skim past. When the quarter closed, my boss stopped by my desk. "Linda, you've built something solid here," he said. "You ever thought about leadership beyond this department?" That night, I walked home through the city air that smelled like rain and possibility. It hit me. I wasn't waiting for approval anymore. I was building a life where it couldn't be taken away. Still, the ghost of my family lingered in strange corners. The grocery aisle where I'd once called Mom for a recipe, the ringtone I'd silenced so long it started to feel like a threat when it finally buzzed. When I closed on my new condo, the realtor handed me the keys and said, "Congratulations, Miss Cassidy." Her smile was wide, genuine, uncomplicated. I smiled back and whispered, "Thank you," even though she couldn't possibly know what those 2 words cost me. The condo was small but bright, white walls that begged to be painted, a balcony that caught the 4 p.m. light like forgiveness. The first night, I sat on the floor with takeout sushi, surrounded by unopened boxes. I should have felt lonely. Instead, I felt still. A week later, I hosted a small housewarming. My coworkers came, a few friends from college, my downstairs neighbor who brought a plant she called low maintenance, like me. We laughed, played music, clinked glasses. There was no talk of Kala, no shadow of comparison, just people who showed up because they wanted to, not because they were related. The next morning, a notification popped up on LinkedIn. Message request. "Hi, Linda. It's Grace, your parents' old friend from Rotary. I heard about your promotion. Your mom and dad must be so proud of you." I stared at the message until the screen dimmed. They hadn't said a word, not a call, not a text, not even a comment. They knew. Family friends don't hear things like that by accident. Someone had told them, and they chose silence. That was when I realized something painful but freeing. My family's silence wasn't absence. It was control. Their way of saying, "We decide who gets celebrated." 2 weeks later, Kala's engagement photos detonated across every platform. Flower fields, champagne, drone shots, a branded hashtag like it was a marketing campaign. My mom's comment sat at the top. "We're so proud of you, sweetheart. You've built something beautiful." I closed the app, not in anger, more in self-preservation. My thumb hovered over the heart icon, the one I'd used for years to pretend approval was enough. Then I locked the screen instead. Dad texted that evening, "Engagement party next weekend. We assumed you'd be there." I typed back, "I won't be attending. No apology, no explanation." There was a time I would have felt guilty. Now I just felt honest. The night of the party, I ordered Thai food and sat on my balcony, watching the lights flicker from the high-rises across the park. Somewhere out there, they were probably taking another perfect family photo. I pictured it. My mom's hand on Kala's shoulder, my dad's smile rehearsed to the same rhythm it's had since 1995. And then I realized, if I had gone, I wouldn't have been in that photo either. A week later, an envelope arrived at my office, thick, embossed, with the logo of the National Women in Tech Leadership Council. Inside was a letter. "Congratulations, Ms. Linda Cassidy. You have been nominated for our annual Leadership and Data Innovation Award." My hands trembled, not because of the title, because of what it meant. Someone saw me, not because of blood, not because of family PR, because of my work. When I told my team, they threw a mini celebration in the office kitchen. Streamers, cupcakes, laughter. Someone taped a paper crown to my monitor that read "Queen of Data." For once, the applause didn't feel conditional. That night, I posted a single photo on social media, the nomination letter on my desk, sunlight streaking across it, no caption. The likes poured in, coworkers, classmates, even distant cousins, everyone except my parents. A few days later, my cousin Isla texted, "Told your mom about the nomination. She said she already knew." I reread the message 3 times. She knew. She just didn't say anything, didn't call, didn't congratulate me. Maybe silence was her version of fairness. If she couldn't give the same to both daughters, she'd give it to neither. But the thing about silence is that it always echoes. That Friday, as I locked my office door, Aunt Jill called out from down the hall, "Linda, you have a minute?" She worked in the same building, 2 floors down, something I'd almost forgotten. Her tone was careful, like she was stepping across glass. "I heard about your nomination," she said. "Your mom mentioned it to me, actually, but she said something odd, said she was glad you were finally finding your footing, like she wasn't the one who helped you get there." I forced a polite smile. Guess everyone has their own version of the story. Jill hesitated. "You know, your grandfather left a small education fund for both of you girls. He meant it to be split evenly, but, well, your dad said it went toward family expenses years ago." My chest tightened. Family expenses? She nodded, eyes down. Cala's grad school tuition, I think. Your parents said you didn't need it. You had a scholarship. I thanked her, then walked to the elevator in a daze. The hum of the descending floor numbers sounded like a metronome for realization. Every time I'd thought the imbalance was emotional, it had always been material too. That night, I stood on my balcony again, the city lights flickering below. The air smelled like rain and regret. I whispered it out loud for the first time. They never saw me. But beneath that, another truth quietly bloomed. They don't have to anymore, because being unseen by them no longer meant I wasn't visible at all. The next day, I framed the nomination letter and hung it by the door, not for them, not even for validation, but as proof that sometimes silence can be rewritten into recognition. Recognition doesn't erase history, but it does make it visible. When the email announcing the award nominations went public, my inbox filled with messages from strangers who suddenly felt like allies. A woman I'd met at a conference years ago wrote, "You were the only person who made that panel human. You deserve this." I read it twice, then closed my laptop and sat in the dark. For the first time in years, someone had said I deserved something, and it didn't feel like a trick. At the award ceremony, my name appeared in looping silver letters on the big screen. Linda Cassidy, Leadership in Data Innovation. The applause was a clean sound, free of obligation. I didn't win, but it didn't matter. Standing there in that glittering hall, I realized I wasn't waiting for my parents to clap anymore. My co-workers had decorated our table with a tiny bouquet of lilies, my favorite flower. No one in my family had ever remembered that detail. As the night went on, people toasted, hugged, took photos. I smiled, posed, laughed. But somewhere inside me, a small ache still hummed, the ache of wanting to send the photo to someone who'd never asked to see it. When I got home, the plaque with my name caught the streetlight through the window. My name. For once, not next to my sister's, not as a footnote to someone else's success. Just mine. The next morning, my phone buzzed with messages. A cousin I hadn't spoken to in years wrote, "So proud of you. Aunt Jill told us everything." A coworker texted, "Your parents must be over the moon." Over the moon? They hadn't even sent a text. I didn't cry. Not yet. But that familiar tightness in my chest returned, the one that comes from being invisible in the place you most wanted to be seen. Then came the twist I didn't expect. A week later, my cousin Isla called. She didn't usually call. We texted. "Linda," she said, "I don't want to stir things, but I think you should know something." I braced myself. "I was at Grandma's last weekend. Your mom was there. Someone mentioned your award, and she said, 'Well, at least she's finally catching up to Calla.'" The words landed like a quiet explosion. Not loud, just final. I thanked Ela, hung up, and sat on my couch for a long time, staring at nothing. That sentence wasn't cruel. It was worse. It was small, dismissive, designed to shrink me back to size. But I didn't let it. Instead, I turned that pain into clarity. Every time I tried to prove myself I'd been playing a game they wrote the rules for, I was done playing. Later that week, my boss asked if I'd like to lead a mentorship program for young women in tech. "We need someone who knows what it's like to fight for recognition," he said. "You'd be perfect." I smiled and said yes. And for the first time, I believed him. That weekend, I decided to do something small but symbolic. I invited a few mentees over to my condo for coffee and conversation. We sat around my little table, laughing about imposter syndrome, career mistakes, and the impossible task of making your parents proud. One of them, a girl named Priya, looked up and asked, "How do you stay motivated when no one believes in you?" I paused. The question was a knife wrapped in innocence. "I stopped needing them to," I said. "You start working like you're already believed in. Eventually, you'll believe yourself." They nodded, scribbling notes like I'd said something profound. But really, I was just telling them the truth. I wish someone had told me 10 years ago. That night, I poured a glass of wine and opened social media. The first thing I saw was Calla's new post, a press release about her promotion, the caption reading, "Proud to announce my new leadership role. Grateful for the unwavering support of my amazing family." Below it, my mom's comment, "We've never been prouder of you, sweetheart." The timestamp, 2 hours after my own award nomination had gone public. I didn't throw my phone. I didn't cry. I just laughed. Quietly, almost tenderly. Because it was so predictable, it had lost its sting. Then, something new happened. Aunt Jill messaged me privately. "Linda, I want you to know your grandfather would have been so proud of you. I remember him saying, "You were the one who always saw the details nobody else did. That's why he wanted you to get that education fund." He said, "Linda will build something that lasts." I stared at that message until the words blurred. That fund, taken, spent, reallocated for the family, had been meant for me. I texted back, "Thank you for telling me. That means more than you know." And it did, because now I finally had proof that I wasn't crazy, that my intuition had always been right. I wasn't overlooked by accident. I was overlooked by design. That night, I framed the plaque from the ceremony and hung it beside the nomination letter by my front door. Both were small things, just paper and glass, but they meant something the lake house selfies never would. They were mine. The wedding invitation arrived wrapped in gold foil, Calla's favorite kind of subtle extravagance. The envelope was thick enough to hold a bribe, but all it carried was a request for attendance and a reminder that family loyalty is sometimes just expensive theater. I placed it on my kitchen counter and left it there for days, unopened, like it might stop existing if I didn't engage. But the truth is, I didn't need to open it. I already knew what it would say. "We'd be honored if you could join us to celebrate Calla and Nathan's union." It was never really we, it was always them. A week later, Dad texted, "Hope you got the invitation. We're counting on you being there." I stared at the message. Not "we'd love to see you." Not "it would mean a lot if you came." Just "counting on you." As if my attendance was part of the seating chart math. I typed, "I won't be attending." No punctuation, no explanation, just truth. He didn't reply, neither did Mom, but I could feel the ripple through the family grapevine like electricity. Cousins went quiet. Aunt Jill texted a single cautious line. "Are you sure? It might be good closure." Closure, I thought. The word people use when they want your silence to look polite. The following weekend, I met my cousin Sam for coffee. We hadn't seen each other in over a year. No falling out, just distance, the kind that grows quietly between people when one stops orbiting the family sun. Sam sat down with a small smile. "So, you're not going to Calla's wedding?" "No," I said, "I'm not." He stirred his coffee slowly. "Everyone noticed you weren't at the engagement party either. Aunt Margaret said your mom looked off about it." I gave a small laugh. "Off how? Like surprised I kept my word?" He shrugged. "Maybe. I don't think she thought you'd stick to it." That line hit harder than I expected. Not because it was cruel, but because it was true. My family had built their entire comfort on the assumption that I'd always bend, that I'd always show up, fill in the silence, carry the weight. They mistook endurance for forgiveness. "I'm done being predictable," I said quietly. Sam looked at me with something like guilt. "You know, I always thought they treated you differently. I just didn't know how much of it you were carrying." I smiled without bitterness. No one ever does, until the person stops carrying it. We talked for nearly an hour, about his job, my work, the ceremony prep, the endless comparisons that had become family tradition. And then, almost casually, Sam said, "You know what's weird? During the wedding rehearsal, someone asked why you weren't in any of the old family photo albums displayed on the table. Your mom laughed it off, said you were probably behind the camera." Behind the camera, of course. It was poetic in a way. My absence had become aesthetic. After coffee, I walked home in the kind of silence that feels both hollow and full. The city was loud, but my mind was louder. The images replayed. Every barbecue, every family trip, every moment I'd documented for them instead of being in it. They had entire albums of my labor, but not of my life. That evening, I took down an old photo frame from my shelf. Inside was a picture of Calla's graduation. I'd taken it years ago. Her in the center, mortarboard tilted just right, my parents glowing beside her. I turned the frame over and found my own handwriting on the back. Calla's big day. Proud of her. It struck me how even my captions had revolved around her story. I wasn't the narrator of my own life back then. I was just the archivist. I opened my laptop and started scrolling through folders, searching for evidence that I had existed in those years. There were dozens of photos I'd taken. Holidays, dinners, birthdays, but almost none of me. Every memory had been curated through their lens, not mine. Somewhere in that realization, a different kind of grief surfaced. Not the sharp grief of rejection, but the quiet mourning of having erased yourself to stay included. The next morning, Aunt Jill called. "Linda, your mom mentioned you're not coming to the wedding." "I'm not," I said simply. She sighed. "I understand, but she's really upset. She says you're being dramatic." I almost laughed. If standing still feels like drama to her, that says more about her than me. A pause. Then Jill's voice softened. You know, your mom told people you've been doing your own thing, but didn't say what that was. When someone asked, she just changed the subject. That was the final confirmation I didn't know I needed. They weren't just indifferent, they were embarrassed. My independence had made them uncomfortable, because it wasn't a story they could control. That night, I ordered dinner for one, opened a new notebook, and wrote at the top of a blank page, "You're not invisible, they just refuse to look." Below it, I wrote everything I'd once wanted to say at a family dinner but never did. You taught me to celebrate others, but never myself. You taught me to show up, even when it hurt. You taught me that love without acknowledgement feels like air without oxygen. But I've learned something too. You can survive without being seen. By the time I finished writing, the page was wet with tears I didn't remember shedding. I didn't send the letter. I didn't even reread it. But writing it was enough. The wedding came and went. I muted the group chat when the photos started flooding in. Calla in white lace, Dad smiling like he'd built her himself, Mom crying with performative grace. No one asked where I was. But 2 days later, Sam texted again. You okay? Yeah, I replied. Why? Your mom looked different at the reception, like something was missing. People noticed. Maybe she finally saw the empty chair, I wrote. There was a long pause before his final reply. Yeah, maybe that's exactly it. 6 months passed before I heard from Calla. The text came on a Thursday morning, sandwiched between a client update and a grocery receipt. Hey, you free to talk sometime? No emojis, no punctuation, just those 6 words, stripped of the usual shine she put on everything. For a while, I stared at the screen, unsure if I should answer. Part of me wanted to delete it. Another part, quieter but steadier, wanted to see what she'd say when there were no cameras, no audience, no parents watching. 2 hours later, I replied, Sure, what's up? She suggested coffee, a neutral space, no symbolism. When I arrived at this cafe, she was already there, her phone face down, a cup of tea untouched in front of her. For the first time in years, she didn't look composed. The posture was still perfect, the lipstick precise, but something in her eyes was frayed. Linda, she said softly, standing halfway before deciding against the hug. Thanks for coming. I sat down, keeping my voice even. You said you wanted to talk. I did. She exhaled, fingers tracing the rim of her cup. You didn't come to the wedding. I know, I said. I wasn't surprised, she admitted, but I hoped you would. I know that too. A pause stretched between us, full of everything neither of us had ever said. She looked up, her voice smaller than I'd ever heard it. I think I didn't ask you directly because I knew what the answer would be. Why do you think that? I asked. Her shoulders slumped. Because we left you behind, and then we pretended you were the one who walked away. It wasn't dramatic, it was honest. And that honesty hit harder than any apology could. I nodded slowly. You know what really hurt? It wasn't the money, or the trips, or the celebrations I wasn't invited to. Then what? The silence, I said. Watching you all cheer for each other like it was a sport while I sat on the outside pretending it didn't bother me. It wasn't being forgotten that broke me. It was realizing you all thought I was fine with it. Calla's eyes glistened. She didn't look away. They didn't mean to make it that way. I know, I said, but they still did. For a while, we just sat there, the hum of espresso machines filling the gaps in our history. Then she whispered, You know, I used to keep photos of us, from when we were kids. You'd always be the one holding the camera and Mom would tell me to smile. But sometimes when she wasn't looking, I'd take a second photo, with you in it. I'd set the timer and run beside you. I never showed anyone. Why not? Because even then, I knew she wouldn't like it. I blinked, taken aback. Wouldn't like what? You being centered in the frame. Her words hit me in the chest like a delayed impact. She reached into her purse, pulled out her phone, and scrolled for a moment before sliding it across the table. On the screen was a photo from decades ago. 2 little girls on a porch, the younger one, me, grinning through a missing tooth, her arm around her sister. The camera angle was off, a little crooked, the light uneven, but it was the only proof I'd ever seen that I wasn't invisible back then. I smiled despite myself. You kept this? I did, Calla said. And a bunch more. I used to look at them whenever I felt guilty. I told myself I'd make it up to you someday, but the longer I waited, the harder it got. Silence again, but this time it wasn't painful. It was human. Do you ever think, she said quietly, that maybe Mom and Dad needed me to be the golden one so they could feel like they'd done something right? Maybe it was never about us. It was about what story made them look better. I thought about that, about every staged photo, every caption, every proud parent performance. It fit too perfectly to dismiss. Maybe, I said, but we were the ones who lived it. She nodded, biting her lip. I'm sorry. The words were small, but they didn't sound rehearsed. They sounded earned. I know, I whispered. I believe you. She smiled faintly. Would you ever consider coming around again? Not for them, just to show up. For you, for me. I hesitated. Maybe, but it would have to be different. I'd like it to be, she said. I don't know how yet, but I want to try. Something in me softened, not because I was ready to forgive everything, but because, for once, it felt like she saw me without needing to shine brighter herself. When we left the cafe, she hugged me, quick and uncertain, like a truce signed in pencil. That night, my phone buzzed again. A message from her. Thanks for today. I hope it's not the last time. I stared at it, smiled faintly, and replied, That's up to all of us. And for the first time in a long while, I believed it. Not because everything was fixed, but because someone had finally told the truth out loud. Spring came quietly that year. No announcements, no family drama spilling across social media, no new cruises or posts captioned "So proud of our girl." Just the stillness that follows a long storm. Then one evening, a notification popped up on my phone. Group message from Kala. Thinking of having a small dinner next weekend. Nothing fancy. Just whoever wants to come. No pressure. No pressure. Those two words said more than any apology ever could. I read the message 3 times. There was no mention of our parents, no expectation, no guilt hidden in politeness. It was just an open door. For 2 days, I didn't reply. Not out of bitterness, but out of uncertainty. I'd spent so long protecting my peace that I didn't know if stepping back into that world, even a softer version of it, would disturb it again. On the 3rd day, I typed, I'll come. The dinner was at Kala's house, a modern place with warm light spilling from the windows, and the smell of something homemade drifting onto the porch. When I knocked, she opened the door. No cameras, no spotlight, just a quiet, genuine smile. Hey, she said. I'm glad you came. Inside, the scene was simple but alive. A few relatives, some of Kala's friends, soft music in the background, laughter that didn't feel rehearsed. And there, at the long wooden table, was something I hadn't seen in years. A chair set aside, pulled out just for me. Kala noticed my hesitation and nodded toward it. That one's yours. I sat down. The chair wasn't gold or fancy. It didn't need to be. It was ordinary wood, slightly scuffed on one leg, but it was intentional. For the first time, I didn't feel like an extra in my own family's picture. Dinner flowed easily. People asked about my work, really asked, not in passing. I mentioned a project my team was launching. Kala leaned forward, curious, asking questions like she wanted to understand, not compare. At one point, Aunt Jill raised her glass. To the Cassidy sisters, she said softly, both of you have come a long way. We clinked glasses. The sound was small, but it echoed in my chest like a beginning. Later, while others cleared plates, Kala joined me on the balcony. The city lights shimmered below, familiar yet somehow less cold. I didn't tell Mom you were coming, she said quietly. I looked over. Why not? Because she would have made it about her. This isn't about her. It's about you being here because you chose to be. I smiled faintly. You sure she won't give you grief? She already does, she laughed softly. Might as well make it worth it. For the first time in years, we laughed together, without tension curling between the syllables. It wasn't loud or performative, just real. When it was time to leave, she walked me to the door. No dramatic goodbyes, no awkwardness, just a simple exchange. Next time, she said, you're bringing dessert. Only if I get to pick the playlist, I replied. She grinned. Deal. Driving home, I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel like I'd won some invisible war. I just felt grounded, like I'd finally stopped orbiting a family system that never built space for me and instead watched it slowly tilt to meet me halfway. My parents still didn't call. They still posted about Kala's achievements. But for the first time, that absence didn't sting. Their silence no longer defined me. It just described them. When I walked into my apartment, the framed nomination plaque by the door caught the light. I paused, fingers tracing my name on the glass. I used to keep it there as proof I mattered, to remind myself that someone, somewhere, had seen me. Now, it was just part of the home I'd built. Quiet, steady, present. Because I didn't need it to prove anything anymore. As I turned off the lights, my phone buzzed. Another message from Kala. Dinner felt good. I hope we keep doing this. I typed back. Me too. Then I added, before I could overthink it, "Thank you for the chair." Her reply came almost instantly. "You never needed an invitation, Linda, just someone to make space." I smiled, the kind of smile that doesn't need witnesses. Some people spend their whole lives waiting for the big apology, the public recognition, the cinematic ending where everything makes sense. I stopped waiting. Sometimes all you get is a seat, pulled out quietly, on purpose, by someone who finally learned to see you. And sometimes that's